And now, the episode you've all been waiting for. It's a basket of dicks!
The man is Heinrich Kramer, and he is writing the most blood-soaked book of the 15th century, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, a book that would torment the world for a century after its release, and be responsible for the torture and death of 70,000 innocent people.
Treating of three necessary concomitants of witchcraft, which are the devil, a witch, and the permission of Almighty God.
He goes on to say that female empowerment would bring on the apocalypse. He even made the title of the book Female, to hammer home his point. Malleus Maleficarum is a hammer used only on women.
So, we must find the mark. We must find the mark.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, located not far from the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is around here somewhere. I don't know where at the moment. I'm kind of glad about that. I have not seen Lord Squeakington in I don't know how long, so who knows. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. And this is an episode of Hex and Hammer, where Skullbeard and I read from the medieval witch hunting manual that caused so many people to die. And this episode is one that I have been, kind of hate to say, looking forward to since the beginning. But it was one of the reasons why when Hertzie and I were talking about what we should read next, when she suggested this, I was like, yeah, that's going to be real interesting. I just wish she was still here doing the pod with me to enjoy this moment. But yes, in this episode, we get to the fabled basket of dicks. And if my edit would, well, you'll figure something out here in a bit, I'm sure. Anyways, it's the first of the month, so I need to thank all of you who have supported the podcast on Patreon over the years. I literally would be living in a ditch somewhere if it wasn't for your support. By the way, next month marks 10 years that I've been doing this podcast. Given that I've been doing this show for longer than I've worked for a single company, and almost half the time that I've been living in this beer can, I suppose I should do some kind of 10th anniversary episode. But I've no idea what that should be. If you have any ideas, please let me know. The email address for the show is trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. As for things around here, pretty much same old, same old. Lost 2 hours of work last week because they sent us all home on Friday because we ran out of material. Don't know if that's the shipment was delayed or if that's because somebody forgot to order it, as has happened in the past. Somebody forgot to order the material and we were all without stuff to do until we got the shipment in. So, hopefully, we'll have material today and we'll be able to work a full shift. Just have to find out and see. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get to Skullbeard and I reading from Hex and Hammer.
Oh my god. How witches impede and prevent the power of procreation. Cock blocking? Anyway, concerning the method by which they obstruct the procreant function both in men and animals, and in both sexes, the reader may consult the reader may consult that which has been written already on the question, whether devils can through witches turn the minds of men to love or hatred. There are the solutions of the arguments. A specific declaration is made relating to the method by which, with God's permission, they can obstruct the procreant function. So we got birth control.
Right. With God's permission.
Which makes them a witch, so you have to burn them.
Right. But that means that God is cool with birth control.
I know.
I think
doesn't
we've
make
already
sense.
hit the show title. God the cock blocker.
Yep.
But it must be noted that such obstruction is caused both intrinsically and extrinsically. Intrinsically, they cause it in two ways. First, when they directly prevent the erection of the member, which is accommodated to fructification. Viagra would have helped that bash.
No, I know. I know, and I'm just thinking, whiskey dick. God's punishment.
They didn't have whiskey when this was written, I don't think.
No, but they had spirits. And I'm sure if you drank enough.
Yeah, that's true. And this need not seem impossible when it is considered that they are able to vitiate the natural use of any member.
I think it's vitiate.
Secondly, when they prevent the flow of the vital essences. God, I'm hearing the dude from fucking Dr. Strangelove. I deny them my essence. To the members in which resides the motive force, closing up the seminal ducts so that it does not reach the generative vessels, or so that it cannot be ejaculated or is fruitlessly spilled.
Oh, so you got blue balls and onanism.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie The Road to Wellville?
Maybe, but I doubt it.
It's about, it's a fictionalized account of John Harvey Kellogg.
No.
Yes, that Kellogg.
Yes, that Kellogg. Okay. No, I don't think I've seen it.
And what's his name? Who I can never remember his name. He played Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Anthony
Hopkins.
Hopkins, yeah. And you know, one of the things is he says is, you know, he goes, the sin of Onan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he just has this really dramatic voice, and he's got these fake buck teeth in, so he kind of looks like a rabbit. It's the movie bombed, but it's actually pretty good, and it's got Cole Meany from Star Trek Deep Space Nine in it.
I don't watch much of that. So
O'Brien.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in that, and it's got Bridget Fonda and what's his name? The guy who played Ferris Bueller in it as well.
Matthew Broderick?
Yeah, and it is a funny movie, and it's mostly accurate. I mean, some of the characters are fictionalized, but it's mostly accurate.
Huh. All right. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that, but I probably should.
It has naked boobies in it.
Ooh, okay. Extrinsically, they cause it at times by means of images or by the eating of herbs, sometimes by other external means such as cock's testicles. All right. But But it must not be thought that it is by the virtue of these things that a man is made impotent, but by the occult powers of devils' illusions, witches by this means procure such impotence, namely that they cause man to be unable to copulate or a woman to conceive. All right.
Now, I wonder what this guy would make of Viagra.
Witchcraft.
Yeah. Oh, and apparently, now granted this is a lot, but 6 cups of the white part of the watermelon rind
Okay.
is equal to taking a Viagra tablet because it has the same compounds in it. Now again, that's a lot of...
That's an awful lot of watermelon. I don't think I could achieve that. Not just the white part?
Yeah, just the white part.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Well, I mean, it's throughout the watermelon, but it's most concentrated in the white part. There was some study some years ago that I saw that it's like, yeah, but of course, and their reaction was, yeah, who the hell wants to eat 6 cups of the mostly flavorless part of a watermelon?
Well, if you can extract it and concentrate it, you
Yeah.
could probably manage it somehow.
And for this reason is that God allows them more power over this act by which the first sin was disseminated. Unintended. However, this says that the first sin was not Eve eating the apple, it was wow wow. Then over other human actions. Similarly, they have more power over serpents, which are the most subject to the influence of incantations than over other animals. Wherefore it has often been found by us and other inquisitors that they have caused this obstruction by means of serpents or some such things. And since we've been talking about movies, I got to inject. And if you haven't seen this, don't feel bad because it's a terrible movie. The Lair of the White Worm.
Don't believe so, no.
It is it's based on the last novel that Bram Stoker wrote before he went totally bugfucked because of syphilis.
Okay.
And this is a modern updating of the novel. It's not a period piece. But the Lair of the White Worm is supposed to be a dragon. And it's got, what the fuck is his name? He was the hot stuff until he cheated on his girlfriend/wife with a prostitute, Hugh something or other.
It's not Hugh Jackman. Hugh Grant?
No. Yeah, Hugh Grant.
Okay.
And it's Ken... Is it Ken Russell? Who's the director? I think it's the same guy who did Crimes of Passion. And he's one of these guys who, he's done some really edgy films, but this is not one of them. And it's just a horrible laugh riot all the way through. I'm surprised one of the bad movie podcasts hasn't done it. But like, there's this gal in there who is the servant of the White Worm, who's a dragon, and Hugh Grant's like the heir of some, the estate that the dragon lives in the cave of, and these Satanists or whatever are going to summon the dragon, and this woman is part of it. And at one point in the film, there's this wicker basket, and it's a big tall wicker basket, and you hear the snake charmer music from all the stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
And the woman pops up out of the basket with the lid on her head. She's got serpent eyes and big long serpent fangs, and she, follows the noise syntonically. It's a terrible movie. I mean, if you get fucked up and watch it, you'll have a good time, but otherwise, don't bother.
Okay, I'll take your recommendation on that one. All right. For a certain wizard who has been arrested confessed that for many years he had by witchcraft brought sterility upon all the men and animals which inhabited a certain house. Moreover, Nider tells of a wizard named Stadlin who was taken in the diocese of Lausanne and confessed that in a certain house where a man and his wife were loving, he had, by his witchcraft, successfully killed in the woman's womb 7 children, so that for many years the woman always miscarried. And that, in the same way, he had caused all the pregnant cattle and animals of the house were, during those years, unable to give birth to any live issue. And when he was questioned as to how he had done this and what manner of charge should be preferred against him, he discovered his crime, saying, "I put a serpent under the threshold of the outer door of the house, and if this is removed, fecundity will be restored to the inhabitants." And it was as he said, for though the serpent was not found, having been reduced to dust, the whole piece of ground was removed, and in the same year fecundity was restored to the wife and to all the animals. Ooh.
Yeah. And doing a search on Stadlin turns up absolutely nothing. Other that there's a restaurant in Rome with that name, and people who actually have that as a last name today, but there's nothing. If you put in wizard, well, guess what pops up? Maleficus Maleficorum.
Of course.
Yeah. And that's it.
It's almost as if this is a work of fiction.
Yeah. No.
Couldn't be.
Another instance occurred hardly 4 years ago, which would be when, motherfucker, in Reichshofen, there was a most notorious witch who could at all times, and by a mere touch, bewitch women and cause an abortion. Now, the wife of a certain nobleman in that place had become pregnant and had engaged a midwife to take care of her, and had been warned by the midwife not to go outside of the castle, and above all, be careful not to hold any speech or conversation with that witch. After some weeks, unmindful of that warning, she went out of the castle to visit some women who were met together on some festive occasion, and when she had sat down for a little, the witch came and, as if for the purpose of saluting her, placed both her hands on her stomach, and suddenly she felt the child moving in pain. Frightened by this, she returned home and told the midwife what had happened. Then the midwife exclaimed, "Alas, you have already lost your child." And so it proved when her time came, for she gave birth not to an entire abortion, but little by little to separate fragments of its head and feet and hands. And the great affliction was permitted by God to punish her husband, whose duty it was to bring witches to justice and avenge their injuries to the Creator.
Huh. Sounds like magic.
So why didn't God just fucking kill the bitch? Himself? Why? What? Why involve the middleman?
You gotta keep it interesting. And there was a town of Mersburg in the Diocese of Constance, a certain young man who was bewitched in such a way that he could never perform the carnal act with any woman except one. And many have heard him tell that he had often wished to refuse that woman and take a flight to other lands, but that hitherto he had been compelled to rise up in the night and to come very quickly back, sometimes over land, and sometimes through the air as if he were flying. Yeah, I think he's tripping balls.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going through the air, you are flying. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a controlled flight or not is another matter.
Does he defenestrate, I wonder?
Ooh. Let's see here. Part 2, Question 1, Chapter 7. How, as it were, they deprive man of his virile member. Oh, I believe this might very well be the chapter where we find it out that one of them had a bird's nest filled with dicks. Now, as it were, they deprive man of his virile member. We have already shown that they can take away the male organ, not indeed by actually despoiling the human body of it, in the manner which we have already declared, and of this we shall instance a few examples.
In the town of Ratisbon, a certain young man who had an intrigue with a girl wished to leave her, lost his member. That is to say, some glamour was cast over it, so that he could see or touch nothing but his smooth body. Okay, detachable penis?
Nice King missile reference.
In his worry over this, he went to a tavern to drink wine, and after he had sat there for a while, he got into a conversation with another woman who was there and told her the cause of his sadness, explaining everything and demonstrating in his body that it was so. The woman was astute and asked whether he suspected anyone, and when he named such a one, unfolding the whole matter, she said, "If persuasion is not enough, we must use some violence to induce her to restore you to your health." So in the evening, the young man watched the way by which the witch was in the habit of going, and finding her, prayed her to restore to him health of his body. And when she maintained that she was innocent and knew nothing about it, he fell upon her and, winding a towel tightly about her neck, choked her, saying, "Unless you give me back my health, you shall die at my hands." Then she, being unable to cry out and growing black, said, "Let me go and I will heal you." The young man then relaxed the pressure of the towel, and the witch touched him with her hand between the thighs, saying, "Now you have what you desire." And the young man, as he afterwards said, plainly felt, before he had verified it by looking or touching, that his member had been restored to him by the mere touch of the witch. Whoa.
Okay, two things that spring to mind. One is that Eddie Murphy routine on Saturday Night Live where he had the Michael Jackson doll and he said it was anatomically correct. And of course, it was just a Ken doll with Michael Jackson's head stuck on it. So
of course.
And he's like, you want to see Michael Jackson's tushy? And he pulls the pants down and goes, "Look, there's Michael Jackson's tushy." And then he spins it around the front and he goes, "Look, just as I always suspected." And the other thing is, there is a psychological condition, I cannot remember it, but it has been documented amongst people in Africa, and I'm sure it's existed elsewhere in other societies, because this certainly seems to indicate it, where dudes will get a form of mental illness where they do not think they still have their penis. They will, you can show it to them, and they're like, it's gone. It's like, dude, it's right fucking there. How can you? And they just can't. And they think because they think they've been cursed by a witch. And that sounds like what this guy had.
Coro disease is a culture-bound delusional disorder in which individuals have an overpowering belief that their sex organs are retracting and will disappear despite the lack of any true long-standing changes to the genitals. Also known as shrinking penis, and was listed in the DSM. Occurs worldwide. Mass hysteria of genital shrinkage. Anxiety has a history in Africa, Asia, and Europe. In the United States and Europe, the syndrome is known as genital retraction syndrome. Is that why they're tanning their balls? What the fuck does this have to do with infrared light?
And all the guys tanning their taints and buttholes, and then discovering that, since those areas have never been exposed to sunlight, they don't tan. They burn real quick. That's gotta suck ass. No pun intended. A similar experience is narrated by a certain venerable father from the Dominican House of Spires, well known in the order for the honest of his life and for his learning. Weird. One day, he says, while I was hearing confessions, a young man came to me, and in the course of his confession, woefully said that he had lost his member. Being astonished at this and not being willing to give it easy credence, since the opinion of the wise, it is a mark of lightheartedness to believe too easily. I obtained proof of it when I saw nothing on the young man's removing his clothes and showing the place. Yeah, okay. Andre Pederasco. Then, using the wisest counsel I could, I asked whether he had suspected anyone of having so bewitched him. And the young man said that he did suspect someone, but that she was absent and living in Worms. Then I said, I advise you to go to her as soon as possible and try your utmost to soften her with gentle words and promises. And he did so, for he came back after a few days and thanked me, saying that he was whole and had recovered everything. And I believed his words, but again proved them by the evidence of my eyes. Now, I have to say, this kind of indicates a lack of ability on the part of the priest, because you'd think he'd be able to, say a few Hail Marys or sprinkle some incest on the
incense.
Yes, on the thing, and the wiener would pop right back. But no, the dude's got to go talk to the witch and say nice things to her. And that could potentially mean that he's going to be sinning more, because he's, the witch is like, no, I want that thingy. I like it. That's a big, But then again, if the priest is getting paid every time dude comes in for confession, then maybe, you can see why he'd want that repeat customer.
But there are some points to be noted for the clearer understanding of what has already been written concerning this matter. First, it must in no way be believed that such members are really torn right away from the body, but that they are hidden by the devil through some prestidigitatory art, so that it can be neither seen nor felt. And this is proved by the authorities and by argument, although it has been treated of before, where Alexander of Hales says that a prestige, properly understood, is an illusion of the devil which is not caused by any material change, but exists only in the perception of him who is deluded, either in his interior or exterior senses.
Well, I don't know who Alexander of Hales was, but he seems to have known his shit, because he's calling it a delusion. And the prestige is a medical term, or a magical term. And I don't remember exactly what part of it means, the trick it means. It might be, the completion of the trick, or it might be one of the steps leading up to the completion. I forget. It's mentioned in, that's where the movie The Prestige and the novel it's based on gets the title. And if you haven't seen the movie, it is really good. It's got Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Michael Caine in it. And
Michael Caine?
Yes. Michael Caine and Hugh Jackman should have gotten the Oscar. If the Oscars were a legitimate awards thing, he would have gotten the Oscar that year. He would have gotten nominated for that role. He didn't get nominated for that role. He did get nominated for something else, and I can't remember if he won it or not. I don't think he did. But it's like, no, he should have gotten nominated for The Prestige, because he is excellent in that. And that's no slight against Caine or Bale, because both of those guys, Michael Caine is Michael Caine, and Christian Bale will do extreme stuff for a role.
Yep.
And David Bowie's in that movie. He plays Nikola Tesla.
Oh.
And the thing, I'm watching the movie and I'm like, wow, Bowie's a little too heavy to be Nikola Tesla. He needs to lose some weight for the role. I mean, he does a good job, but it's like, from a physicality standpoint, he needed to drop a few pounds.
Rail thin.
Yeah. All right. With reference to these words, it is to be noted that in the case we are considering, two of the exterior senses, namely those of sight and touch, are diluted, and not the interior senses, namely common sense, fancy, imagination, thought, and memory. Huh? What the hell is fancy?
I don't know.
I don't either. But St. Thomas says they are only for, as has been told before, reckoning fancy and imagination as one, and with some reason, for there is little difference between imagining and fancying. See St. Thomas 179, no idea what that's supposed to be. And these senses, and not only the exterior ones, are affected when it is not a case of hiding something, but the causing of something to appear to a man either when he is aware or asleep.
Okay. When a man who is awake sees things otherwise than they are, such as seeing someone devour a horse with its rider. Oddly specific. Or thinking he sees a man transformed into a beast, or thinking that he himself a beast, and must associate with beasts, for then the exterior senses are deluded and are employed by the interior senses. For by the power of devils, with God's permission, mental images long retained in the treasury of such images, which is the memory, are drawn out, not from the intellectual understanding in which such images are stored, but from the memory, which is the repository of mental images, and is situated at the back of the head, and are presented to the imaginative faculty, and so strongly are they impressed on that faculty that a man has an inevitable impulse to imagine a horse or a beast when the devil draws from the memory an image of a horse or a beast. And so he is compelled to think that he sees with his external eyes such a beast, when there is actually no such beast to see, but it seems to be so by reason of the impulsive force of the devil working by means of those images. That's quite a mouthful.
Yeah. And it need not seem wonderful that devils can do this. Well, yeah, I mean, if devils are evil and they're doing something, probably not going to be wonderful. You know? When even a natural defect is able to affect the same result, as is shown in the case of frantic and melancholy men, and in maniacs and some drunkards who are unable to discern truly. For frantic men think they see marvelous things, such as beasts and other horrors, when in actual fact they see nothing. See above in the question whether witches can turn the minds of men to love and hatred, where many things are noted.
Smell toast? And finally, the reason is self-evident, for since the devil has the power over inferior things, except only the soul, therefore he is able to effect certain changes in those things when God allows, so that things appear to be otherwise than they are. And this he does, as I have said, either by confusing and diluting the organ of sight, so that a clear thing appears cloudy just as after weeping, owing to the collected humours. The light appears to different from what it was before, or by operating on the imaginative faculty by a transmutation of mental images, as has been said, or by some agitation of various humours, so that matters which are earthy and dry seem to be fire or water, as some people make everyone in their house strip themselves naked under the impression that they are swimming in water. I've been to a party like that once.
may be asked further let's try this one again. It may be asked further with reference to the above method of devils whether this sort of illusions can happen indifferently to the good and to the wicked, just as other bodily infirmities can, as will be shown later, be brought by witches even upon those who are in a state of grace. To this question, following the words of Cassian in his second collation of the Abbot Cyrenus, we must answer that they cannot, and from this it follows that all who are deluded in this way are presumed to be in deadly sin. For he says, as is clear from the words of St. Anthony, the devil can in no way enter the mind or body of any man, nor has the power to penetrate into the thoughts of anybody, unless such a person has first become destitute of all holy thoughts and is quite bereft and denuded of spiritual contemplation.
Well, that's quite the claim. Oh my goodness. This agrees with Boethius, where he says in his Consolation of Philosophy, "We have given you such arms that if you had not thrown them away, you would have preserved from infirmity." Also, Cassian tells in the same place of 2 pagan witches, each in his own way malicious, who by their witchcraft sent a succession of devils into the cell of St. Anthony for the purpose of driving him from there by their temptations, being infected with hatred for the holy man because a great number of people visited him every day. And though these devils assailed him with the keenest of spurs to his thoughts, yet he drove them away by crossing himself on the forehead and breast, and by prostrating himself in earnest prayer. Yeah, that would scare me off too.
Yeah, so Boethius was a Neoplatonist.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was like a king who got deposed and was put in prison and then was executed, and he wrote this book while he was in prison.
Another rabbit hole.
Yeah. Therefore, we may say that all who are so deluded by devils, not reckoning any other bodily infirmities, are lacking in the gift of divine grace. And so it is said in Tobias 6, the devil has power against those who are subject to their lusts. Okay. This is substantiated by what we are told in the first part in the question whether witches can change men into the shapes of beasts. For we are told of a girl who was turned into a filly. Technically, not a man. Mm-hmm. For a variety of reasons. Even as she herself, and except St. Macarius, all who looked at her were persuaded. So I guess the saint was the only one who looked at her and said, "No, you ain't no horse." But the devil could not deceive the senses of the holy man, and when she was brought to him to be healed, he saw a true woman and not a horse. You just said she was a girl, now you're calling her a woman. Either way, not a man. While on the other hand, everyone else exclaimed that she seemed to be a horse, and the saint, by his prayers, freed her and the others from that illusion, saying that this had happened to her because she had not attended sufficiently to holy things, nor used as she should Holy Confession and the Eucharist. And for this reason, because in her honesty she would not consent to the shame proposal of a young man who had caused a Jew who was a witch, oh great anti-Semitism, to bewitch the girl, so that by the power of the devil he turned her into a filly, except he didn't. He just made her think she was one, and other people thought so as well.
She was a pony girl?
A furry.
Uh-huh.
Can you remember when you first heard about furries?
Yes. Well,
Ballpark, what year was it?
oh God, it was this century. 21st century.
You know when I first learned about them?
No?
1989.
Okay.
Yeah. And I knew people who worked in the comics industry at that point in time, and who were drawing. They were involved. Let me put it that way, because comics is a whole complicated thing. They were involved with the production of some of the comics that, are like the OG inspirations for furries.
Okay.
And even they thought it was weird. One of these days I will have to tell that tale on the podcast, because it's interesting. One of the guys involved that, last I heard, was in prison in Canada.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, he was an American coming back, and this was the early part of the 21st century. He was coming back from Canada to the States, and when he was going through customs in Canada, on his way out, they said, "We want to look at your laptop."
Okay.
He had CSAM on it.
Yep, busted.
Yeah, and so he got to go to prison in Canada, and I haven't heard about him since. I've not been able to find anything on the web as to whether or not he's out. Which is really strange.
People get memory hold.
Yeah.
We may summarize our conclusions as follows. Devils can, for their profits and probation, injure the good in their fortunes, that is, in such exterior things as riches, fame, and bodily health. This is clear from the case of the blessed Job, who was afflicted by the devils in such manners. But such injuries are not of their own causing, so that they cannot be led or driven into any sin, although they can be tempted both inwardly and outwardly in the flesh. But the devils cannot afflict the good with the sort of illusions, either actively or passively. Okay.
And speaking of Job, I just read the other day, and I have not fully processed it, so I'm not sure, and done some cross-checking to, figure out what I think about it. But this essay somebody wrote that said, "We have misinterpreted Job all wrong."
Okay.
And they say that when the Torah, or the Bible, was originally compiled, Job was the last book.
Okay.
And the question Job asks at the end of the book basically boils down to, what the fuck gives you a right to do this shit to me? And apparently it so stunned God that he stopped talking to humanity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm kind of oversimplifying it, and I'm not going to dig out the thing, because I don't want to have to wade through all of it, because it's not an overly long essay, but it's a bit long. But it's like kind of interesting. and I mean, it does make a good point that legitimately there is, a mistranslation of parts of the text because there's a phrase used in it that, is part of Job saying, what the fuck gives you the right to do shit like this to people? Mm-hmm. And that phrase is only used one other time in the Bible.
Okay.
So the interpretations people make of it may not be accurate as to what was intended by the author. It's one of those things. It's like, it could be good, it could be right. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there is no God, etc., but it's like, that's an interesting explanation.
The first spiritual anarchist.
Yeah. Not actively, but diluting their senses as they do those of others who are not in a state of grace, and not passively by taking away their male organs by some clamor.
That's pretty not passive.
Yeah. For in these two respects, they could never injure Job, especially in regard to the venereal act, for he was of such continence that he was able to say, I have vowed a vow with my eyes that I shall never think about a virgin.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you want somebody who knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And still less about another man's wife. Maybe they're into that kind of thing.
You never know.
Nevertheless, the devil knows that he has great power over sinners. See St. Luke 11, when a strong man armed keepeth his palace, his goods are in peace.
Yeah. Strong fences make good neighbors.
Oh, I was just thinking about Quagmire when he discovered porn on the internet, and he walks out of his house and one of his arms is like 6 times the size of his other arm.
But it may be asked, as to illusions in respect to the male organs, whether, granted that the devil cannot impose this illusion on those in a state of grace in a passive way, he cannot still do so in an active sense. The argument being that the man in a state of grace is deluded because he ought to see the member in its right place, when he who thinks it has been taken away from him, as well as other bystanders, does not see it in its place, but if this is conceded, it seems to be contrary to what has been said. It cannot be said that there is not so much force in the active as in the passive loss, meaning by active loss, not his who bears the loss, but this who sees the loss from without, as is self-evident.
Ouroboros, round and round and round.
Yeah.
You disappear up your own asshole. That's all I can make out of that. So,
pretty much. I'd love to see your point of view, but I can't get my head that far up my ass.
And I mean, that is one long fucking sentence.
And it just keeps going. Therefore, although a man in a state of grace can see the loss of another, and to that extent the devil can delude his senses, yet he cannot passively suffer such loss in his own body, as for example to be deprived of his member, since he is not subject to a list. He is not subject to list? What? In the same way, the converse is true, as the angel said to Tobias, those who are given to lust, the devil has power over them. Yeah, okay, sure, whatever, man. Why don't you just lead with that?
Yeah.
And
what, like then, is to be thought of those witches who, in this way, sometimes collect male organs in great numbers. As many as 20 or 30 members, and put them in a bird's nest. Yes, we've got the bird's nest!
Nice.
Or shut them up in a box. Double entendre? Mm-hmm. Or triple entendre? Mm-hmm. where they move themselves like living members and eat oats and corn. and for all Americans out there, we need to point out that corn in this instance is generic grain, not maize, as much of the rest of the world calls it.
Mm-hmm.
As has been seen by many and is a matter of common report. It is to be said that it is all done by devil's work and illusion, for the senses of those who see them are deluded in the way we have said. Now, I gotta point out, this is a rational explanation. You're not really seeing a bird's nest or a box full of dicks. You're just hallucinating.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised there wasn't a bag of dicks, though.
Yeah.
A little disappointed.
Well, there may have been, but somebody probably ate them.
Mm-hmm.
Like those nutbags who seized that wildlife refuge and they asked people to send them snacks. And they were complaining because the people sent them dick-shaped gummies.
And sex toys and
a 55-gallon drum of lube. Somebody sent them a 55-gallon. I didn't know you could buy it like that, but you can.
he bought it off Amazon and had it delivered. For a certain man tells that when he had lost his member, he approached a known witch to ask her to restore it to him. She told the afflicted man to climb a certain tree, and that he might take which he liked out of the nest in which there were several members. And when he tried to take a big one, the witch said, "You must not take that one," adding, "because it belongs to a parish priest." Oh, for fuck's sakes.
You can't have that one. It belongs to Father Long Dong.
Uh-huh.
Why would that matter? I don't. It's not like he's going to use it for anything. I mean, you know, in theory, in reality, maybe the choir boys are like, no, don't let him have it back.
Yeah, wasn't there that grooming ring where they gave the kids necklaces or jewelry of some kind to signify that they had been groomed? It was a bunch of priests. It was a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's like, no, that one's mine, that one's yours.
Oh, I missed that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was the the co-founder of Cards Against Humanity. Apparently he saw, yeah, it's like, fuck you guys. Said he saw a good deal on a 55-gallon drum of lube on Amazon. And just like, fuck all y'all.
I guess there's some questionable things about the folks from Cards Against Humanity, but that owns a positive spot in my vote.
Mm-hmm. All these things are caused by devils through an illusion or glamour in the manner we have said, by confessing the organ of vision, by transmuting the mental images in the imaginative faculty. It must not be said that these members which are shown are devils is in assumed members, just as they sometimes appear to witches and men in assumed aerial bodies and converse with them. And the reason is that they effect this thing by an easier method, namely by drawing out an inner mental image from the repository of the memory and impressing it on the imagination. So, dudes can fuck with your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Giddy up.
And if anyone wishes to say that they could go to work in a similar way when they are said to converse with witches and other men in assumed bodies, That is, they could cause such apparitions by changing the mental images in the imaginative faculty. You're talking about hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
So that when men thought the devils were present in assumed bodies, they were really nothing but an illusions caused by a change of the mental image is in the inner perceptions. So close, motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
So fucking close.
Broken clocks and all that.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's there's this Episcopal priest who on Blue Sky posted this thing about, how they had been meditating on the fact that in some part of Exodus it makes very clear that no human could see God and survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then they meditate that, God showed us his face through Jesus, and we can taste God by, eating the communion wafer. It's like, okay, you're really close to figuring out that maybe there's something wrong here with the Bible.
Well, not only that, who the fuck has seen the face of God? Adam and Eve saw God hanging out in the garden.
Yeah, and
lots of people saw God.
And Moses saw his ass.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, and then somebody, because I reposted that elsewhere, and somebody responded to it. What does God taste like? Is he warm and salty?
It is to be said that if the devils had no other purpose than merely to show himself in human form, then there would be no need for him to appear in an assumed body, since he could effect his purpose well enough in the aforesaid illusion. But this is not so, for he has another purpose, namely to speak and eat with them, and to commit other abominations. Therefore, it is necessary that he should himself be present, placing himself actually in sight of an assumed body. For, as St. Thomas says, where the angel's power is, there he operates.
Yeah.
The company man, he's punching a clock, he's doing his thing, just working for a retirement, okay?
I'm reminded of that scene in JFK. Once a company man, always a company man. Wait. That's it. God is the CIA.
Different company, but still.
And it may be asked, if the devil by himself and without any witch takes away anyone's virile member, whether there is any difference between one sort of deprivation and the other, in addition to what has been said in the first part of this work on the question whether witches can take away a member. He does actually take it away, and it is actually restored when it has to be restored. Well, and so this is a whole chapter about wieners.
Mm-hmm. Cock blocking, cock thieving, detachable penis, invisible penis.
I gotta. Why is a straight man so concerned about some other guy's dick?
I know, it just boggles the mind, doesn't it?
It's like I had these dudes who are asking me, like, why aren't you fucking that chick? I'm not interested in her. Why are you worried about another guy's dick? Would you be fucking that chick? I'm like, no, man,
Don't have to.
Yeah, there's no law. Nobody's got a gun to my head. Secondly, as it is not taken away without injury, so it is not without pain.
Oh, so it hurts to have your dick ripped off. Okay, thanks.
Who would have thought?
Shocker.
Hey, maybe shouldn't do that whole circumcision thing. Thirdly, that he never does this unless compelled by a good angel. Oh, I'm sorry.
You think they're gonna steal somebody's dick without a good reason?
I'm sorry, but if you're ripping off genitals, I can't call you a good angel.
No.
I mean,
No.
unless you're ripping off Hitler's genitals, okay, and that would,
Depends what you're gonna do with them after, but whatever.
Yeah. For by doing so, he cuts off a great source of profit to him. Supposedly, John Holmes's wife came home one day and found him there, naked, looking at his dick, going, I could probably make a lot of money with this thing. And the rest, as they say, is history. For he knows that he can work more witchcraft on that act than on other human acts. For God permits him to do more injury to that than to other human acts, as has been said. Yes, literally a sentence ago. But none of the above points apply when he works through the agency of a witch with God's permission. So why would you worship a God who lets you chop off people's dicks?
People are weird, man. What can I say?
That's it for this episode of the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. It's also on Stitcher, and most of the episodes are on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter at tparkatheist, and it's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to donate to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker.
The podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fosnuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.